My name is Erin, and I'm the founder and president of Critter Creek Farm Sanctuary. I first went vegetarian when I was 14 because I realized that farmed animals were just like the other animals that we already love, like dogs and cats, and I had always been a big animal lover. Shamefully, I didn't know about the abuses in the dairy industry or the egg industry, and so I stayed vegetarian until probably 2016. So that was many years of that I look back now on and regret for not being vegan. So in 2016, I learned what happens to dairy calves in the dairy industry and immediately went vegan. When I was 7 years old, my mom told me that I could have a pet, and I had lots of asthma and allergies, and so while I was a big animal lover always, I was never able to have a pet of my own. So she said at that point that I could have a pet hamster because she read that hamsters were okay for kids with asthma and allergies. So we went to the pet store. The young woman working there handed me a hamster. The hamster immediately peed on me and then bit me. And so she said, maybe we should try another one. So she handed me another one, and that one also bit me. So at that point she said, have you ever considered a pet rat? Of course, we had not ever considered a pet rat because rats aren't pets, are they? But we thought we would give it a try. So she handed me a little rat, and he did pee on me, but he did not bite me. And instead, he just kind of crawled up and he sat on my shoulder and hung out, and he was completely delightful. So, of course, we came home with the rat. We named him Templeton, which on reflection was not a great name. Templeton from Charlotte's Web was not the nicest rat. He was selfish and lazy. Whereas my Templeton was delightful and loyal and fun, incredibly smart. Templeton, though, was the only rat I knew, so Templeton ended up being his name. As much as I loved my rat, other people didn't. And I took him to school one day for show and tell. Adults, like teachers, made lots of comments about how he was gross and how he belonged in the trash, or that they wanted to feed him to a snake. Not only was I hurt, I was also very confused because these were teachers who had gerbils and hamsters as class pets, and yet they wanted to kill my rat. Gerbils and hamsters are pretty much the same thing as a rat, except the rat is much less likely to bite you. So I really didn't understand what the difference was that was making them feel this way. It seemed to be that they just saw rats differently, even though they were very similar. As I got a little bit older, I realized that this differential treatment applied to all sorts of species. It's what we call now speciesism. I didn't have a word for it back then. But we love horses, but we kill cows. We love dogs, but we eat pigs. We think eagles are majestic and we feed songbirds, and yet we kill chickens and we kill turkeys and ducks. None of that really made sense. It seemed very much like the Templeton scenario. These are animals who are very similar, and yet we perceive them as being in different categories. So that realization prompted me at age 14 to go vegetarian. I didn't have any real concept of the idea of veganism. I considered myself at 14 an animal rights person. I didn't buy anything that was tested on animals, and I wouldn't buy leather or any kind of animal products or participate in animal exploitation. But I didn't realize that the dairy industry and that the egg industry were just as bad. And I unfortunately remained ignorant of that until 2016. At that point, we were opening Critter Creek Farm Sanctuary. I figured that if I was going to be opening a farm sanctuary, I should probably learn a little bit more about the animals I was intending to rescue. We kind of wanted to specialize in cows. And that's when I learned what happens to calves in the dairy industry. The male calves are mostly just killed outright because the veal market isn't big enough. And, the ones who aren't killed outright go to become veal, which is perhaps even a worse fate. So as soon as I learned that, I immediately went vegan. Never looked back. Well, that's not true. Looked back a little bit in regret that I didn't do this sooner. I thought that I was not contributing to animal cruelty. I thought that I was doing all the right things, and I wasn't. So, we try to make up for that now. I try to make up for that now by advocating for farmed animals every day.
Define veganism.
In my eyes, veganism is the lifestyle where you try to do the least possible harm to other animal species and to the environment. Nobody's going to be able to do that perfectly because we all leave a footprint on the earth, but we try. We do our best to do the least amount of harm.
What are common questions you get when people find out you're vegan?
Oh, I think everybody gets the where do you get your protein question. Where do you get your B12? Where do you get your iron? How did you give up cheese? Does that mean you can't eat chocolate? Does that mean you can only eat salad? All kinds of ridiculous questions like that.
After going vegan, did you notice anything different physically, mentally, emotionally, in any other way?
I'm a little bit of a junk food vegan, so I don't know that I necessarily reap all the health benefits out of having a vegan diet. I do try to do kind of the whole food plant-based thing, and when I do that, I feel so much better. But vegan donuts are amazing, so I can't stick to that 100% of the time.
Did you bring any?
Oh, I wish. I wish we had some. There's actually a vegan donut place here that you should hit on the way out. It's called Joyfully Baked. So mainly emotionally and mentally, the change is that I am more motivated than ever to do whatever I can to try to minimize the suffering experienced by all species of animals, but especially farmed animals. That's probably not like the typical response. It's probably as a result of some of that guilt that I have for having participated in it for so long. And it's also part of just being in the farmed animal rescue. I know these animals personally. They are my friends, they are my family. And so that really makes me motivated to want to make the world a better place for them.
What is the most important reason for you to be vegan now as opposed to then?
The most important reason for me to be vegan then was animals, and the most important reason for me to be vegan now is still animals. Veganism could be bad for my health and I wouldn't care. I'm at a point in my life where I simply can't tolerate the cruelty of animal agriculture in any way, shape, or form. So it's 100% for the animals. The environment is another nice little bonus. And the health thing, like when I can stick to my whole foods plant-based. But it's animals.
How do you encourage others to be vegan?
So through the sanctuary, we try to engage in what we call gentle activism. Through our social media, that's largely done through storytelling. And we're kind of known for our storytelling. We have unique not words that we include in our social media stories. Things like not cow and not pig and cowsplainer and moo people. And those end up being very popular because the people who support us on social media end up using those terms, which is kind of cool to see. But we like to tell the stories of the rescued animals. We kind of figure that the animals are their own best advocates. And so if people fall in love with them, then they won't want to hurt them. That's why people don't want to hurt dogs or cats, because they know and love dogs and cats. But not everybody can get out to a farmed animal sanctuary, so we try to facilitate them getting to know these animals so that they form a connection with them, the same kind of connection that they have with other animals. We also host events out at the sanctuary, and that's to facilitate interactions, like physical interactions with the animals. And then we have plant-based vendors come out so people can see that we do not, in fact, simply eat grass, and that you can eat wonderfully on a vegan diet. You can have junk food, like cake and donuts and vegan wings, or you could have something that's healthy and also delicious. So we want to bring people out here and just allow it to be kind of a gentle educational opportunity.
Did you have any challenges after going vegan, whether they were physical, mental, family, friends, shopping, anything like that?
The main challenge with going vegan, once your eyes are open to the reality of the animal agriculture world, you want to shout it from the rooftops and tell as many people as possible, because you kind of assume that people to otherwise be compassionate, kind people, you kind of assume that once they learn that they will also immediately go vegan. And that doesn't happen very often. In fact, it happens very seldomly. And that's kind of painful. It can strain relationships if you're not careful, because it can kind of change the way that you see people. So really, the most difficult part of being vegan is other humans.
How has being vegan affected your relationships?
Well, my husband is also vegan. He went vegan at the same time as I did. My daughter is vegan. And most of the people in my close social network are also vegan. And through veganism, through the sanctuary, we've kind of formed this lovely little family unit. And it's great. It's something that I didn't have before. So it's certainly been something that has enriched my life. But as I said, it does, I try not to let it strain relationships with people who are not vegan, because I still genuinely care about and love those people. But it get a little bit difficult sometimes.
Could you be with somebody that isn't vegan?
Could I be with somebody who isn't vegan? No. In a word, no. Never.
How do you deal with other family members that aren't vegan, like during the holidays especially?
Well, I'm fortunate in that my mother is vegan, and we have a very, very small family that mostly consists of my husband, my daughter, and my mother. And so we're all vegan, and that makes the holidays really easily. And then, as I said, my extended family with the sanctuary and our sanctuary network, they're also all vegan. So it makes get-togethers easy and fun. I do know that lots of other people do struggle with that, though.
How might life be different if you were raised vegan?
Ooh. Well, if I had been raised vegan, I certainly wouldn't have the guilt that I'm carrying around for participating in the system for as long as I did. I imagine that if I had been raised vegan, I would have still ended up in the same place as I am currently, because rescuing animals was something that I just always wanted to do. I was the kid who brought home the sick caterpillar or the sick frog or lizard or any kind of animal. I just always had that intimate connection with animals. So I imagine if I had been raised vegan, that would have been stronger from the outset. But I think I probably would have wound up in the same place.
Do you have any regrets?
Well, the main regret is just that I didn't go vegan sooner. I regret that I didn't do the research that I should have done. I'm a scientist, and my specialty is human anatomy and physiology. And so I am intimately familiar with the feedback loops involved in things like lactation. I should know that animals don't just produce milk because they feel like making milk, that there has to be a baby in order for the hormones that cause milk production to surge. So I regret that I didn't think about that I allowed myself to kind of be brainwashed by the industry who tells us that, well, these cows, they make so much milk and they have to be milked. It's cruel if you don't milk them. I bought the lie. And so not only do I regret it, I also feel really stupid because as a science person who knows that sort of stuff, I really should have seen through it.
What are some mistakes you've made?
Well, one of the things that I've learned is that when I'm trying to talk to non-vegan friends and I talk about the statistics of the industry and the cruelty of the industry, what they land on is animal welfare. And they say, well, I think animals should be treated humanely. But how do you humanely kill somebody who doesn't want to be killed? Well, you can't, but they should be raised humanely. So that doesn't work all that well sometimes. And there's actually lots of studies about that, the efficacy of using the shock images versus helping people to foster a connection. So I have definitely gained more ground by switching tactics and trying to get the non-vegan friends to interact with our animals. Other mistakes would be things like buying the wrong cereal, things that you think should be vegan that end up not being vegan, like the vitamin D that's in cereal. For a long time, we bought the Smart Balance butter, thinking that was vegan, but it's not, for the same reason it has the vitamin D thing. There have been a few products like that were oops, that we ended up having to cut out.
Now, people might not know what you're talking about when it comes to the vitamin D thing. You want to share something on that real quick?
So a really common and cheap source of vitamin D to be added to food is lanolin. And lanolin is the oily secretion that sheep make from their skin to help keep their wool moist. So it's really kind of like sheep grease. It's kind of gross. Not only is the product not vegan, but it's just really nasty. Like, I don't know why anybody would want to eat sheep grease. And the fact that was in my cereal is really pretty disgusting.
How do you suggest others get started?
Ideally, I would love for everybody to go vegan overnight, to read our social media posts and fall in love with our critters and say, I'm done. I recognize that that's probably not a realistic option for most people. There are programs that can help you transition, things like Challenge 22. It's a program based on the idea that it takes 21 days to break a bad habit. Consuming animal products is a bad habit that we hope that people want to break. And so they have mentors and nutritionists and all sorts of stuff like that will help you go vegan. And then there's other things like Veganuary and other programs that can help people get started. If those kinds of programs aren't for you, that there are other ways that you can at least get the process kick-started. Every week, cut something out. Start off by cutting out cow, and then you cut out pig, and then, so that it's kind of a more gradual process.
Do you have any success stories you want to share?
So at Critter Creek Farm Sanctuary, we have two types of programs. We have our animal rescue and care program, and then we have our public outreach program. So each type of program has different kinds of successes. The animal care and intake program, we're currently home to 225 different animals, 158 of whom are bovines, so cows, a bison, and a water buffalo. Then we're also home to pigs and mini donkeys, standard donkeys, horses, a couple turkeys, and then companion animals like cats and dogs. So I look at each one of them as a success story. For example, we took in a calf and a piglet, Amos and Lionel. Amos is the piglet, Lionel is the calf. They were rescued down in Homestead, Florida from a roadside stand selling animals for Santeria sacrifice. Live animal sacrifice is not illegal, and it's something that goes on in every state. The reason that these animals were rescued from the stand is not because they were going to be sold for sacrificial purposes. The reason that they were rescued is because the stand was engaging in massive animal cruelty. The animals had no food, they had no water, they were literally living in cardboard boxes covered in their own filth. At this stand, Lionel was in a cardboard box, and then Amos the piglet was in a cardboard box on top of him. And somehow, even though they couldn't see each other, they communicated, I guess, like through the box. And when they got to the South Florida SPCA, which is the organization that rescued the animals from the stand, it was clear that these two were completely bonded like that. They were both really, really skinny, especially Amos. Amos maybe weighed about 2 pounds. Especially Amos was terrified of people. My husband and I drove down there and picked them up and brought them back, and with lots of TLC and patience, they are absolutely thriving. Amos even likes us a little bit now. He's still not somebody who's like going to come over and flop over for a belly rub. We can get some head scratches in, and he doesn't run away. He's not afraid of us. And then Lionel is like the biggest teddy bear. He loves hugs and cuddles and that sort of thing. So that's the type of animal rescue program success that makes it all worthwhile. So with Amos and Lionel, just had their very first vegan pizza this morning as a treat. So to think about where they were, where death was imminent and they were just in such awful shape, to now they're living this charmed life and they're eating vegan pizza. I think that's the definition of the success story. In terms of our public outreach, it's a little more difficult to measure success. We actually recently just did a survey of our social media followers to see what kind of impact we were having. Of the 325 or so people who responded, about half were either omnivore, pescatarian, or vegetarian. The other half they either identified as plant-based or vegan. When we asked them what impact Critter Creek Farm Sanctuary's social media storytelling had on them, about 30% said that they were starting to consume fewer animal products. About 6% said that they went vegan, and another 6% or so said that they went vegetarian. We got lots of comments about how the ones who were reducing their consumption of animal products were doing so with the aim of becoming vegan. And then the people who are already vegan said that our content was reinforcing why they're vegan, and they're making them more dedicated to the cause and stimulating them to be more involved in animal advocacy. So those are really important success stories, I think, because even though we are a really large sanctuary, we're the largest bovine sanctuary in the United States, when you consider the 77 billion land animals who are killed every year, it's less than a drop in the ocean in terms of the number of animals we can actually take in and save. Yes, it means the whole world to an individual animal, but it doesn't mean much at all to the 77 billion who are still suffering. So we figured that the best way to have an impact more globally is to get people to stop eating them, stop wearing them, stop using them for other purposes. So that type of success is an important metric for us.
Does saving one animal really make a difference when 200 million are dying every day?
Saving an individual animal when 200 million are dying every day seems like a very small thing. But to that animal, it's everything. In the grand scheme of things, it is a small thing. But to that animal, since every animal is an individual and they're sentient and they are emotional creatures, their lives mean something. And so when we're able to take in somebody like Amos and Lionel and give them a new life, it's everything to them. But then what's more is that through our social media storytelling and through our public outreach, Amos and Lionel can then affect other people and maybe help them make the connection. If people can fall in love with the one animal we've rescued, maybe something will click and then they will go vegan. Maybe they'll even become activists themselves and kind of create a wave effect.
Just give me a quick quote or two, or a few if you want.
You probably shouldn't use this, but one of the quotes that we say a lot is from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's a short forward quote, "People are a problem." So we say that a lot, but you probably shouldn't use that. I'll get in trouble.
Is there anything about vegans you wish you could change?
I don't know that this applies strictly to vegans. I think this applies more just to humans in general. A lot of humans are black and white thinkers. And when you're dealing with a problem that is as huge as the one we're facing with animal agriculture, you've got to think in shades of gray. You can't look at things as everything is a moral absolute. That there are some moral absolutes in my mind. I think it's morally wrong to exploit animals, obviously. Sometimes you have to look at things as being for the greater good, like all the debate over the Impossible Chicken or Beyond Chicken or whatever it is at KFC, or the debate over the Impossible Burger. I see a lot of black and white thinking there, and a lot of absolutes, as opposed to looking at it from a larger picture of the good that can come from those types of products. Sometimes vegans, we tend to be a passionate crew. We have very strong beliefs. That's what led us down the path to veganism. Sometimes those strong beliefs, though, can cause those moral absolutes and that black and white thinking. And we end up fighting with each other instead of fighting for the animals. So it can cause us to lose focus. But again, I think that's kind of a human problem. That's not necessarily just a vegan problem.
Are you raising your child vegan?
Yeah, so my daughter is 17, and she's been vegetarian from birth. Even back before we were vegan, when we were just vegetarian, we substituted out the easy things. Gosh, in like 30 years, I don't think I've bought cow's milk or like dairy creamer or anything like that, because there's been substitutes for that forever. So my daughter grew up vegetarian, but also with a lot of vegan substitutes. And in fact, the first time that she went to a friend's house and she asked for milk, she didn't realize that there was a different kind of milk, and the friend's mom gave her cow's milk. And she was like, "There's something wrong with this." And she handed it back. She'd never tasted cow's milk before. When we went vegan, when my husband and I went vegan, we didn't force it on her. We let her make her own decisions. And it took her a little bit longer, I think largely due to things like Reese's peanut butter cups. When you're hanging out with friends and they're getting cheese pizza and that sort of thing. So it took her a little bit longer. It wasn't overnight like it was for my husband and for me. But I would say within about 4 months or so, she had fully transitioned to vegan and hasn't looked back. And in fact, she got her boyfriend to go vegan as well.
So how would you handle it if you found out she wasn't sticking with it?
I've thought about that. You always love your kids, no matter what choices they make. But that doesn't mean that the choices that they make are always easy for you to deal with. But especially once they become adults, you have to, let them make their own choices. I don't think that will ever be a thing, knock on wood somewhere, because she's very committed to animals, to animal advocacy. I mean, she grew up surrounded by animals. She grew up knowing that kindness and empathy to animals matters, and she's a very empathetic person. So I don't think that would ever be an issue, but it is something that I have thought about, and like how to handle that. Honestly, it would hurt. It would hurt to know that she had lost her way like that. But you always love your kids and you support them, and if they get off on the wrong path, then you try to gently steer them back on the right one.
How did you know it was safe not to feed your children animals?
I actually went to medical school. When I graduated, I went into education as an anatomy and physiology professor. Then I started writing anatomy and physiology textbooks. So human anatomy and physiology is kind of my thing. So I am very familiar with the human body and with what it requires, and I was perfectly comfortable feeding her as few animal products as possible. And in fact, she was a competitive gymnast from the age of 9 to the age of 16. And through about the last half of her competitive gymnast years, she was fully vegan. And, she's like solid muscle and can do crazy things with her body. So it clearly didn't have any kind of negative effect on her health.
What kind of challenges might she have had growing up that you're aware of?
Growing up, just being vegetarian, I know that she got made fun of a little bit. People didn't necessarily understand, why won't you eat the pepperoni pizza? And to her credit, she is a very strong-willed and strong-minded person, and that kind of teasing or light bullying was not going to dissuade her. She would usually respond with something like, "Animals are my friends, and I don't eat my friends." End of story. So I think she dealt with it okay. I imagine that it was probably a little bit isolating at times, but on the whole, I think she did okay.
And did you prepare her for going into those situations in any way, like going to a party or going to school? Was there any special preparation?
I wouldn't say that there was special preparation going to school or parties or going to friends' houses. She knew that she didn't eat animals, and what's more, she didn't want to eat animals. She always made it very clear up front. Like, we didn't even have to tell her friends' parents that we were vegetarian or then eventually vegan, because she would do it, because she didn't want to eat that sort of thing. But again, she's kind of strong-willed, and that served her well in that capacity.
What kind of foods are important when raising a child, vegetarian or vegan especially?
My daughter Elise is one of the most picky eaters ever. So she was raised largely on a diet of Morningstar Farms chicken nuggets, the vegan ones, macaroni and cheese, and then eventually vegan macaroni and cheese. Those were like her two main food groups. Then peanut butter and jelly. And then we would try to squeeze in some vegetables. She liked peas and she liked corn. Being raised as a vegetarian vegan kid, she also loves tofu. So we would try to sneak as much of that stuff in there as possible. And thankfully, she also really loves soy milk, and soy milk is just packed full of nutrients. So we encouraged that as much as possible. But it was challenging. She was not a kid who was going to sit down and eat a salad or kale or anything with spinach in it or anything like that. So we had to improvise sometimes. She would drink these like fruit smoothies. That was the best way to get her to consume fruit, was if it was blended up. And then like vegetables, as long as they were not the main focus of the of the meal, she would eat that. So she would have her vegan nuggets and then her macaroni and then like some peas. And we would ask her very politely to please eat the peas first and then move on to the other things. Eat the peas and then drink the soy milk and then move on to the other stuff. It was not always easy.
Did she ever have a doctor or anybody like try to encourage her to eat animals?
No, thankfully. We made it very clear with her pediatricians up front that that was not an option. And so nobody ever pursued that. Plus, she was always extremely healthy. So there was no need for concern.
What about your favorite foods?
Well, like I said, I kind of have a junk food vegan problem. So like vegan donuts are one of the best things ever.
I hear that a lot, actually.
Oh gosh, they're good. The vegan ice cream is getting better and better and better. The oat milk ice cream is amazing. I do eat actual healthy food, I promise. I love like vegetable soups. That's kind of one of my dietary staples, to prevent myself from eating nothing but vegan donuts and ice cream. I was never a big like cheese person or anything like that, so I'm not too big on the vegan cheeses or the vegan cheese dishes because I just didn't like it in the first place. Oh, and fruit smoothies. That's another. I guess at least came by it honestly, where she will drink fruit more than she'll eat it. So I'm kind of the same way.
So like, what's a typical dinner though, besides donuts?
A typical dinner could be like a vegetable stew or soup or some kind of tofu. Tofu's great in the air fryer, mixed with vegetables and rice. You know, when we're trying to be good. When we're being less good, we will have some of the meat substitutes like gardein, like stir-fried, or in a vegan pot pie. Anything that anybody else eats, we also eat. It just doesn't have animal products in it.
What about lab-grown meat? Would you ever eat that?
I appreciate the idea of lab-grown meat. I think it will be amazing for obligate carnivores like cats, for pet food, for dog food. I know that dogs can thrive on a plant-based diet. Cats, it's a little more iffy there. And then big cats who are in captivity, lab-grown meat is a fantastic option for them. And then for people who just won't give up the flesh thing, if they eat the lab-grown meat, then, a cow didn't have to die. And so that's great. Personally, I don't look at that as food. It's gross to me. My specialty, again, is human anatomy and physiology. And when you cut open a human body and you look at the tissues inside, like the muscle and the connective tissues and the fat and the bone, it looks exactly like what you get on your plate when you're eating meat. Chemically, biochemically, it's made of the same stuff. So if human is not a food choice for me, then a cow isn't either, because it's basically the same stuff. And it's all just really pretty disgusting.
Is it important for other people to be vegan? And if so, why?
I think the only way that we will ever get away from animal cruelty and exploitation in our society is to have a critical mass of people go vegan. I think that the number that's often cited in research is 10%. 10% is that critical mass. If you have 10% of the population that holds a core belief, that makes it go mainstream. And then that triggers legislation changes that triggers more food options and so on. And it triggers the transition away from animal products. I also think that we're just not going to have a choice because of climate change and the devastating effect that animal agriculture has on the environment. I mean, that's never going to happen in my lifetime, that everybody goes vegan. But I do hope that that's our future, and that the lab-grown meat thing, if that takes off and people are unwilling to give up their steak or whatever, at least they can have that so that the animals don't suffer and the planet doesn't suffer. So even if they're not purely vegan, they're still sort of minimizing their impact. Like, I don't know what the statistics are, like how many animals you save per year by going vegan. We're often told that we should respect somebody's choices. It's my choice to eat animals, and you should respect that. It's really hard to respect somebody's choice when there's a victim involved. And I think the average person eats several hundred victims per year. And so is it so much a choice at that point? Or is it something that you are doing to other sentient creatures? That's kind of hard to respect that when there's a victim. The difference that one individual makes, apart from the several hundred animals per year that they're going to save, is getting to that critical mass of the 10% of the population that holds that core belief. The more people that go vegan, the closer we get to that, and the closer we will get to actual proper societal change for the betterment of everybody, for the betterment of our health, for the betterment of the environment, and of course for the betterment of the animals.
And do you think we'll ever see a vegan world?
So will we ever see a vegan world? Probably not in my lifetime. I'm often asked, like, when will you feel satisfied? When will you feel like you have done enough and that you're big enough? In terms of like the sanctuary. And the answer is that I won't feel like I'm done until we have that vegan world, until there's no more animal exploitation. So basically never. I will never feel satisfied. I will always want to keep going and keep going bigger and having a bigger impact and effect on the world. Realistically, I don't know if it'll ever happen, but I do think that we're going to have to start getting closer to it just for practical reasons of climate change. But I do hope that someday we will have that vegan world.
What would a vegan world look like?
It's difficult to imagine because we are so far, vastly far removed from what that world would look like. One of the things that we get asked a lot is like, well, if everybody went vegan overnight, what would happen to all the animals? Like, that's a nice thought experiment, but it's of course never something that's just going to happen. The reason that there are so many billions of farmed animals in the world is because we continue to make new ones. So the first thing, obviously, is that we stop making new animals so that there aren't hundreds of billions of them throughout the world. So one of the things about animal agriculture is this devastating effect that it has on the environment. So if we did actually have a vegan world, we wouldn't be needing to bulldoze the Amazon or raise the Amazon. We wouldn't be needing to feed our plants to farmed animals to feed a smaller portion. You can only imagine that a proper vegan world would be one that's more just, where not only is human health better, but there's less hunger in the world, the resources are distributed a little bit more equally, and hopefully the planet recovers. I don't know if realistically that means the functional extinction of animals like cows and farmed pigs, I would hope not, because I love them. But we're so far removed from that vegan world currently that it's kind of hard to imagine what it actually would look like.
It'd be great to hear, more about your sanctuary. I don't know if you did it justice yet. Mm-hmm. So usually the last question I ask is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to mention? You could go on a tangent about, Critter Creek and how many animals, how many acres, how people can donate, how they can find out more, maybe your vision.
So Critter Creek Farm Sanctuary was founded in 2016 with the mission to promote compassion for farmed animals through rescue and through public outreach. And we ultimately envision a world where animal exploitation doesn't exist. And we will continue with our mission until that vision is achieved. I'm sorry, I'm wheezing. I don't want to, that's going to be picked up on the mic, and that's not going to sound good at all. In addition to the asthma, I also have really bad allergies, and one of the things to which I'm horribly allergic is hay, and animals who eat hay and live in hay. So basically all the animals I rescue, I'm terribly allergic to them. So interesting lifestyle choice there to surround myself with the things that are going to make me have to use a lot of this and Benadryl. One more.
Now, do you want me to keep that in there?
You're welcome to, yeah.
Really? They're my directors.
Very real. It's very real.
I need to put their names in the director list.
So Critter Creek Farm Sanctuary has two facilities. We have the Critter Creek facility, which consists of 210 acres. About 50 or so of those acres are dedicated to the farm sanctuary part. 125 acres are dedicated wildlife preserve. And then much of the rest was dedicated to habitat restoration. This whole area used to be longleaf pine habitat. Like 99% of that habitat has been destroyed. So we set aside about probably 25 total acres to plant a bunch of longleaf pines to try to restore some of that habitat. So with the Critter Creek facility, we kind of have like a three-pronged approach here where we want to support the farmed animals, we want to support wildlife, and then we also want to support, environment and the environment restoration. Our second facility is Critter Hills, which is about 10 miles up the road. When we started Critter Creek, that was our first facility. We filled up within about 2 years, because the need for farmed animal rescue and farmed animal sanctuaries is so great, especially cows. Cows take up a lot of space. Cows are, they're hard on grass and pasture, so you can't shove too many of them into one area. So we realized that if we wanted to keep this going, we were going to need a bigger ark. And my husband and I had been saving up for years and years and years to build our dream home. And so we had to make the choice between dream home or rescuing more animals. And so it wasn't really a choice. A house is a house. We're going to do the thing and get more property so that we could save more animals. So in 2019, that came to fruition with the purchase of the Critter Hills property. And the Critter Hills property was a former cattle ranch. So it's really set up for cows, which is perfect. And it's 205 total acres, and about 180 of them are dedicated to animal areas. I think that about 54 residents live at Critter Creek, and then 170 something live at Critter Hills, just because there's more space. Critter Creek Farm Sanctuary is the largest bovine sanctuary in the country. And the reason that we wound up specializing in bovines, at our previous house, which is just up the road, we were down the street from one of those small, locally owned, humane family farms, so just like a small cattle ranch, basically. And what we would notice is that at certain times of the year, we would hear the cows just crying and yelling and yowling for days. And we always wondered what it was that was going on, what was causing their distress, because they were clearly distressed yowls. And one day we saw a truck pull out and pull away with their babies. And then the yowling started. And that was so heartbreaking. It was so crushing. And it had such a profound effect that hearing their suffering, I wanted to do whatever I could to minimize it. And so that's kind of how we wound up specializing in cows. And cows are amazing. So I'm glad that we did.
What other kind of animals you got?
So in addition to 158 cows, we house 19 pigs, 5 mini donkeys, 5 standard donkeys, 10 horses, 2 turkeys, 6 dogs, 17 cats. Well, now 1 rat. There were 2, but 1 just passed away.
Are all the dogs vegan?
Or all the dogs are fed V-Dog.
Looks like you were getting emotional about the rat.
Yeah, she just...
What was the rat's name?
Her name is Saffron. Rats, unfortunately, only live a couple years. And we got them from an owner surrender where a woman was wanting to open a petting zoo and then decided it was too much work. And so she just wanted to get rid of the rats. And one of our rescue partners, Live Freely Sanctuary, she convinced this woman to surrender the rats to a sanctuary instead of getting rid of them, whatever that entailed. So they came to us. They were already over a year old. They came to us over a year ago. So, it's about that time that they start to get sick and fade. The rats, the domesticated rats, have been bred largely to be used in lab experiments. And so they have been bred selectively to actually develop different diseases that severely limits their lifespan. So Saffron, who just passed away on Thursday, it's Saturday now, she had lymphoma, which is really, really common. We've lost a lot of rats over the years to lymphoma. So, always sad to lose a friend.
So how can we find out more about your place? Do you have a website, a Facebook page?
So if you'd like to find out more about Critter Creek Farm Sanctuary, we are all over the place. Our website is crittercreekfarmsanctuary.org. Our Facebook page is Critter Creek Farm Sanctuary. Our Instagram is Critter Creek Farm Sanctuary. Our TikTok has to be Critter Creek FS because Critter Creek Farm Sanctuary was too long and they wouldn't allow it. There are links to donate on all of our social media platforms if you would like to support us financially. If that's not an option, simply following our accounts and liking our content, interacting with our content, especially sharing our content, helps to make the public outreach part of our mission more achievable. Basically every time you share one of our posts, you're providing a signal boost and you're telling other people about the animals and their stories, and you're helping with our public outreach efforts. So there's lots of ways to help and to support the sanctuary. We're also partnered with the company A Billion, which is an app that you can download for free, and it allows you to review vegan restaurant dishes, vegan products, including like cosmetics and toiletries, in addition to food products. For every review you do, you can donate $1 to a sanctuary. It costs you nothing. A Billion does all the donations. So that's a really good way to help rescued animals for free.